Evening everybody, please be seated. First of all, I'd like to welcome Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dubay to the Council. I don't know how... I hope you enjoy it, but not much from it. Do we have any apologies?
We do. We have apologies from Councillor Baker, Councillor Halswell, Councillor Hayden-Taylor, Councillor Holdsworth, Councillor Patman, Councillor Smith and Councillor Paulsworth.
I wonder if it's something I said. Minutes of the previous meeting. Do you have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Cowan.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Please sit down. Mr. Meadowcroft, please sit down. You're not allowed to raise points of order. Please sit down. Philip, please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. I don't like being insulted from a public gathering. Please sit down.
I have not insulted.
Sit down.
Well, I will say again, I have not insulted.
Councillor Cowan.
My understanding is that a point of order merely points out an error or violation and it's not a public question. It therefore raised the need for clarification in that the point of order raised at the last meeting was ruled according to these minutes inadmissible according to the Council's Constitution. But Chapter 3 of the Constitution does not prohibit a point of order from a member of the public. In fact, Chapter 3 is silent on the issue. There is nothing in Chapter C which Councillor Paul and Alderson's Constitutional Committee can rely on, although it is reported they have done. It provides an implicit assumption that prohibits a resident from raising a point of order. My question therefore was the professional advice that you relied on sound or not, and who gave that advice?
Just a point of correction there, it is not my constitutional committee, I'm not the chairman, it is Councillor Paul Swallow who is the chairman.
I'm sure that's an oversight for me. Councillor Cowan.
My apologies for that. I believe it's important to clarify all these issues which have been raised to avoid these draft minutes being tainted with material errors of fact. I have another point as well on another matter. Should I deal with that now?
No, I think we'll do this one first.
Thank you.
Paragraph 14(2)(13) of the Constitution expressly states the relatively strict confines around a point of order. These are that only a member of this council can raise a point of order, since the rule especially refers to a member and no one else. He or she can only raise a point of order which relates to a breach of council rules of procedure in the Constitution or the law. That member must also indicate in what way he or she considers that the rules of procedure or the law have been broken. Finally, the Mayor's ruling on the matter will be final. Therefore, the intervention by the member of the public at the council meeting could not be a point of order, since he is not a member of this authority. Nor did his statement relate to a breach of council rules of procedure in the Constitution or the law. It was not a point of order in compliance with the rules of 14(2)(13)(13). It was simply a representation on something that he considered to be incorrect. The Deputy Mayor's correct ruling at this time was that it was inadmissible as a point of order. As such, the detail of intervention is not something that should be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The fact of the intervention is noted therein, however. On this basis, I consider the version of the minutes in front of member colleagues today to be accurate and complete in this regard. I know 1313 is silent on whether a member of the public can raise a point of order, but it doesn't permit him and it doesn't prohibit him, but it does mention a member. So I'm taking the rule as it's written, and my judgment is that the minutes are accurately recorded.
Thank you. The other point, a little bit more light-hearted, is where agenda page 35, I'd like to ask for clarification, and that is that recommendation 3 that was not adopted, in fact, not the same recommendation as spelled out on page 36, which was approved. The reason I'm making this point is historians, or any sad, I won't say the word person, or anyone at some future date may study these papers will not have the slightest idea what the proposal was. And for completeness and clarity, would it not have been more helpful if recommendation 3 that was not adopted be spelled out in detail on page 35? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Okay, for the sake of clarity, we will add in that the recommendation was not adopted. What the recommendation was. Thank you. No other comments on the minutes, I will send those. So can I have members' agreements to both sets of minutes, please? As amended. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I have an interest to declare on item 77, Auditor Appointments 2018-19. The Public Sector Auditor Appointment Authority will select from a list of 5 audit firms to audit bodies such as this Council. And my current employer, KPMG LLP, is one of those 5 audit firms that may be chosen from. As such, I have an interest in this item as my employer may benefit from any decision this Council makes on auditor appointments. As such, I will abstain from any vote and leave the Chamber during the discussions on this item. I would also like to welcome Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay to the Council and hope she enjoys her time as a councillor and finds it a fulfilling experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other declarations of interest? No. Public question time. Can I ask Mr. Russell to ask his question of Malcolm Richards, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council is currently updating its transport plan. What is the 2016-17 budget spend on transport across the borough? And how much is being spent on the following elements? Highway maintenance, traffic management of the existing road network, bus services, community transport and responsive transport.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. The answer is as follows. £1.4 million on highway maintenance, that is reactive road and footway repairs, including patching and potholes. £480,000 on traffic management of the existing road network. That includes minor traffic schemes, signing, lining, traffic regulation orders, road safety activities, traffic signal maintenance, traffic surveys and data collection. £734,000 on bus services and £98,000 on community transport and responsive transport. On the capital side, there are numerous highway and transport capital projects and initiatives, and these are all listed in the Council's medium-term financial plan, this book here. Of the capital sums allocated to highways and transport, there is £2.28 million per annum allocated to carriageway structural maintenance, which includes the annual road resurfacing programme. Where the borough's roads there are assessed to identify those most in need of treatment, including their structural condition and usage.
Thank you. I have a supplementary.
Yes. Thank you for your answer. Would the council please make this information available to the wider public by including it on your website, together with and in order to present a more complete picture of the transport and highways expenditure across the borough, information on an element not covered by my original question, namely new road works. If so, could you also include on the website details of the cost and length of new roadworks over the same period?
Right. Several points there. We'll be making notes of those, and we will discuss obviously with the relevant officers and with the finance people and find out, and with the web people, find out how much of that can be provided and how.
Yeah, I don't expect an immediate answer.
Probably not. Thank you.
Mr. Russell, please feel free to go to the issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Granderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask my question to the Executive Member for Finance. Could he tell me what capital investments the Council will be making in early as part of the 17-18 budget?
Thank you for your question. The schemes included in the budget specific to only the area of early are the expansion of Lodden Primary School, 2.4 million over the next 2 years, and the proposed expansion of Aldrington Primary at 4.8 million over the next 2 years. However, there are a number of other programmes in the capital vision which, though borough-wide, involve additional investment in early. Amongst these are schools urgent maintenance, school kitchen maintenance, school LED enhancement, that's lighting, I think, special needs education, enhancing provision for children and young people with disabilities, highway drainage schemes, street lighting column structural testing, highway infrastructure flood alleviation schemes, highway carriage structural maintenance, highway footway structural maintenance, LED street light replacement programme, traffic signal upgrade programme, Wokingham Borough wide cycle network, sports provision across the borough, waste schemes and library services. I would like to stress that even where capital investment is made in areas outside Early, it is also to the benefit of residents of Early, as they can utilise the roads, community facilities and other other facilities beyond their immediate boundaries.
I presume you have a supplementary question.
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that response. Based on this, would you agree that this Council is supporting Early in a fair manner?
I believe that we spend money in Early in a financially responsible manner.
Thank you, Guy. You're free to go wherever you wish. Are there any petitions to be heard? Thank you. Mayor's announcements. You can see you have a list of the various engagements I've undertaken since November, December. Two of them didn't actually help my figure because I had 2 Christmas lunches in one day. But one of the most pleasant things I had to do this week was go to the Poppy Awards presentation. And I was pleased to be able to receive on behalf of Wokingham Borough Council a certificate of appreciation from the Poppy Appeal, which I now hand over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you very much.
Well done. I did wonder if I would have to wait for the applause. Right, now we hit the fun part of the evening, medium-term financial plan. We have a maximum period of 1.5 hours to debate this item, and group leaders are allowed to speak for up to 12 minutes each. But it's not compulsory. I presume you're going to propose this, Julie? I am. Would you like to kick it off, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Before I move on to talking about the budget, I'd also like to welcome Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dubay to her place. I'm sure she'll bring her well-known energy and hard work to the opposition benches, so welcome. So that's 3 welcomes in the space of about 25 minutes, so you're pretty doing well. First of all, I would like to explain why I'm delivering this budget speech this year rather than the Leader of the Council. Unfortunately, Councillor Baker has to be away for a long-standing family commitment and has asked me if I could propose the budget instead. Looking at the newspapers the other week, Councillor Baker and I were amazed to see Reading Borough Council complaining about their supposed impoverished finances, telling the world that we here in Wokingham are spoilt by the government, which was news to us. We were so astonished that Councillor Baker felt compelled to write to the paper to point out that in 2017-18, 76% of our core spending will come from residents' council tax. By 2019-20, the end of the 4-year settlement, this will rise to 91%. By contrast, the 2017-18 for Reading is 68% will come from the council tax. Put another way, the government grant received per head will be £81.70 for Wokingham and £236.55 for Reading, nearly 3 times the Wokingham number. And I did get them to check that, and that is correct, sadly. The reduction in council grants is not the only pressure on the council's budget. Positive changes brought in will have an impact on our finances too, as they must, including the national living wage, the apprenticeship levy, council tenant rents reduction, to name but 3. These stand alongside the growth in children's services and health and wellbeing at 2.9 million. When you put this together and net off any potential increase in income from council tax, this leaves a saving target of £5.4 million. With these facts in mind, my fellow executive members have worked hard to get to this final budget. They've had to be extremely flexible as the financial landscape has changed. I'd like to thank them and their officers for their supreme effort. Because our finances have changed in such a way that the council tax now accounts for more than 81% of our spending power, it is vital that we continue to see a healthy income from the council tax. We are fortunate then that we have an extremely strong tax base and that we have extremely efficient officers who collect a rate of 98.85%, one of the highest in the country. Last year, the council realised that making efficiencies in individual service areas in isolation was no longer viable. With an ambition to avoid any cuts in services, sometimes something quite radical had to be put in place in order to achieve these savings. This is where 21st Century Council projects comes in. This is a fundamentally different method of operating, which will result in £2 million saving next year and £4 million of savings in future years. It involves personalising our services, giving residents the choice of how they access those services, providing more online and self-service access, whilst ensuring that those who will need to speak to a real person can do so. We could have clung to the belief that the best way of doing things is the way we've always done them in the past. Instead, we've had to radically reshape the nature of what we do and how we do it. We on this side of the chamber know it is our duty, even in times of financial difficulty, to invest. By investing in our services, we are investing in our residents' future security and well-being. This budget includes a significant level of new capital investment in the Borough for 2017-18. A total of £152.8 million shows our commitment to the provision of infrastructure and regeneration across the Borough. Much of this is funded by developer contributions or by borrowing that we will more than repay in future years, as is the case with the town centre regeneration or our housing company development projects. All of our borrowings is undertaken at fixed interest rates at a time when these rates are incredibly low, so there is no danger of the council being affected by the sudden rise in interest rates. All communities across the borough will benefit from this capital investment strategy. They will get the benefit of improved highways infrastructure, beautiful places in our high-performing schools, and our income-generating development schemes. It shows the ambition the council has for regenerating the borough and our innovative ways of generating capital funding. This year saw the first major Wokingham Town Centre regeneration project get underway, and as more companies have signed up for the leases. Whilst we appreciate there are a number of people that had concerns whether this regeneration would take place, we are pleased to see that a number now actually see that things are beginning to move and progress is being made. Our companies continue to grow and mature, setting a high standard for local authority companies across the country. The Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead are joining Optilis, which will triple turnover, a great success that will save taxpayers money for both councils whilst improving our social care. Woking Housing are well on the way to completing the work at Phoenix Avenue and Fosters. Meanwhile, Loddon Homes, a subsidiary of Woking Housing, has become the first council company to be granted registered provider status as a for-profit company. Leisure is a key component in the health and wellbeing agenda. Therefore, it is important that the council provides facilities that residents can use to keep them fit and well. We are approaching the magic figure of 100 hectares of new country parks, or SANs, as they're more commonly known, paid for by developer contributions. It is important to note that residents can get a lot of their daily exercise by simply walking for short periods of time, which they'll be able to do in these new parks. The leisure contract for managing the council's leisure centres is up for renewal soon, and a capital budget has been put in place to upgrade or rebuild existing centres. This is a leisure spend, but it will have significant impact on the health and well-being of our residents. On schools, Councillor Haytham Taylor, or Richard Delinsky, who is sitting in for today, is spearheading our campaign to fight for a fairer funding formula, which is ably supported by our local MPs and members of the executive. We could have put together petitions and held endless debates in this chamber, but rather than read from the Corbyn Book of Protest, as a leadership we are actually working to bring about real change. Nonetheless, our budget is providing 40 million of significant increase in primary school capacity, and the first new secondary school for many years has been built, providing the long-awaited school in the south. Highways are also receiving a real boost, with 80 million for new roads and enhancements to existing ones. These are just a few highlights of the capital programme. The medium-term financial plan contains the full details of investments, and I have no doubt my executive colleagues will speak on their individual portfolios shortly. It is in the time-honoured Conservative principle that public bodies should spend within their means, whilst protecting and expanding the services that people need most. It is a principle we have stuck to since the financial crash, and it is a principle we continue to take action with this budget. In holding the reins of power, we must sometimes do what is hard. So I say to the opposition, don't take the easy option of carping, making gimmicky gestures, or throwing out vague generalisations on how you would have done it better. Join together with us tonight and vote for this budget. This is a balanced budget that provides for our residents in a time when other councils are cutting services. If you're serious about being in power, be bold as we are being bold, be strong as we're being strong, and show leadership as the Conservative administration continues to show leadership. I commend this budget to the Council.
I presume you have a seconder who may not be sitting too far away from you.
That's correct. If I may reserve my right to speak.
You may. Does anyone else wish to speak? Keep your hands up, this could take a while. Okay, thank you, members. Lindsay, do you want to go first? Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. For the fourth time, I am, as leader of the group here, very pleased to welcome Imogen here. And I was going to ask Keith how his holiday was, but I think I have to say, Keith, wherefore art thou? Within the Lib Dem team, we discuss and agree policies openly, so I shall focus on our major concern, which is the size of the future debt contained within this budget and the impact this could have on the council, whilst the team will concentrate on their portfolio areas, highlighting differences between our approach and yours. I acknowledge that many of the ruling group are trying to do their best for our community in these difficult times, but we in the opposition group feel you need to stand up against the government more strongly than you have done. Often there is deference to them just because they are of the same party as you. If you are not prepared to say what is needed in so many areas, including local business rates, school funding, or the threat to take local money away from our area, then we will, loudly, clearly, and often. What we have from you at the moment is just not good enough, and local people are beginning to realise it. We fully support the proposal to increase council tax by 3% to cover the adult social care. I mentioned to Anthony recently that we would have done the same. However, in the medium to long term, we do not believe council tax is the correct means by which adult social care should be funded. We believe there needs to be a national debate on this topic, and one that is cross-party. Norman Lamb MP has made a sensible suggestion as to how we could move forward, and something like his proposal would be a better way to fund this important area. On the subject of the council tax of 1.94%, this is rather predictable. In fact, I mentioned the figure to Chief Exec several months ago, within plus or minus 1%, 0.1% I mean. 0.01% I mean. However, we believe that you have missed an important opportunity to provide a much needed boost for additional funding to our services. If you had gone for a referendum last summer or autumn to seek views of the residents in Wokingham to raise council tax above the 2% ceiling, I believe you may well have got that approval. I do not think you will now though. I have been advised that the cost of such a referendum is around £150,000. You continually bleat on about having a poor deal here in Wokingham, but when you had the opportunity to do something locally yourselves, you fluffed it. Remember, it is your Conservative government that is cutting our funding, no one else. The budget we have before us is the most risky, potentially dangerous budget I have seen in all my time on Wokingham Borough Council. At the moment, we are a medium risk, medium borrowing council, but with the implementation of all the projected borrowing, we will soon become a high risk, high debt council with little room for movement. My fire is therefore aimed at the Executive Member for Finance for presenting such a budget. You expected it, I told you it was coming. You are currently planning to borrow a further £82 million alone this coming year, and by 1920 this will have grown to 191 million pounds. At that time, the external debt is estimated to total £271 million. Internal debt is to rise £29 million this coming year, further rising to £70 million in 1920. This means you are using our investments to pay off debt. If the level of investments falls too low, then the viability of the councils and its ability to pay its way comes into doubt. This is a very dangerous concern. If we look at the individual increasing borrowing areas, and this is on page 97 of the MTFP, what do we find? The title there, you find borrowing, forward funding. This is monies associated with SDL developments. It is used to pay for infrastructure, including schools and roads, etc. The council has to provide this infrastructure irrespective of the rate at which the houses are built and sold. Any slowdown in this market will leave the council exposed to considerable levels of borrowing and increased costs. These additional costs will be supported by the general fund, paid for by council tax. This increase is £47.3 million over the next 3 years, and I categorise this as high risk. Wokingham housing, next line, or it's one of the lines. This is money borrowed by Wokingham Housing Limited from Wokingham Borough Council and is used to pay for social housing and other related areas. If anything should happen to the viability of WHL, then the council would be exposed to increased debt. This increase is £31.23 million over the next 3 years. I think this is a medium risk. Town centre regeneration. This is money borrowed by the council to pay for regeneration of the town centre. I'm not sure if you're aware, but any additional costs, interest rates, etc., is being ploughed back in to the regeneration project, making it more expensive and therefore less viable. It is very susceptible to market forces and changes to the economy. This increase is £74.22 million over the next 3 years, and I categorise this as very high risk. In fact, when I had a discussion with our director on this subject, the word risk was mentioned many times. Invest to save. This is money borrowed by Wokingham Borough Council to pay for new facilities such as leisure centres. This increase is £26.06 million over the next 3 years. Whilst this is more conventional council type borrowing, it is still not without risk. Standard allocation. This is the one area I don't think is risky. This is money borrowed by the council to allow the council extra freedom to use on non-specified projects. This is just under £12 million over the next 3 years, and I consider it to be low risk. Internal borrowing. The council plans to use its current investments to largely cover this area. During 17-18, the council will use £29 million of its investments, leaving only £40 million. Over the 3-year period, internal borrowing will increase by £70 million. The use of these investments is extremely risky, as it has its effect the council selling its own silver. Once it is gone, there is no fallback. If this area falls too low, and 40 million seems to be a ceiling figure, once it is gone, what this area falls too low, then the actual working of the council could be seriously impacted. This, I feel, is not safe use of funds. This is extremely high risk. I want to summarise now. Of the £260 million plus to be borrowed, over £191 million could be categorised as extremely high risk or high risk. This covers about 75% of the total projected debt. Anthony, you seem to be gung-ho with the council finances. I bet you do not do the same with your own. The levels of projected debt I have mentioned are eye-wateringly high. I can see no contingencies within the budget to meet unexpected need. It seems to be no more than a let's hope for the best or it'll be all right on the night approach. In addition, you have also left an overspend of £800,000 from 16-17 financial year, which shows up as a £700,000 spend requirement in 17-18. For a long time now, you've gone on about an overspending budget dating back to 2002. Well, you've left an overspend that's at least 3 times the 2002 figure, so perhaps you might like to comment on that. No, this budget shows an almost complete disregard for the residents and council taxpayers working borough. I believe you're being foolhardy to propose such a risky budget, particularly at a time of uncertainty. Without doubt, interest rates are going to rise, inflation is growing, and projected costs are more than likely to increase to a higher level than that currently forecast. I have yet to see the cost of a road, for example, go down. Often they double or even triple in cost. I see no contingencies in the budget to cover this type of thing. If I had enough votes, I would propose a vote of no confidence in you, but that would depend upon whether enough of your group will stand up against you. Last year, I joked about the capital programme being a load of tripe. This year, it is too serious for me to make such comments. The council is at yet another crossroads, and it is difficult to see which way the finances will fall. In conclusion, all I will say is that this is a wasted opportunity budget, produced by an absent, waste of time leader of the council, laying waste to council services. We shall be voting against this budget because we feel the levels of borrowing, not necessarily the council tax rise or the adult social care element, I hasten to say, are far too high, making it a very risky budget indeed, if not unsafe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we be worried by our council borrowing so much in the current uncertain climate? The answer is a clear yes. The biggest risk in this budget is the escalated borrowing requirement, and it's unclear what that specific funding sources are. We do not know if they cover the cost of the debt or not. The budget's investment ambitions carry significant risk, and we are not assured that the income sources fund these ambitions. Specific schemes, whether they be walking housing, limited affordable homes, strategic development locations, leisure centre or town centre regeneration, need careful monitoring to ensure satisfactory income generation, something the Council historically has not been very good at. The delivery of an ambitious capital programme has serious inherent risks, and the Council's Chief Financial Officer recognised that by saying the financial climate is expected to remain extremely challenging for some years. With US interest rates rising with 2 interest hikes this year, 10-year gilts already at 1.2%, supporting a bank rate of 0.25%. Our government is subsidising just short of 1% on interest rates, while its borrowing is currently rising at 1.8 trillion. That's a straw drop in £5.17 thousand per second. It's pretty clear that the pressure on borrowings and inflation will force the government to raise interest rates. Wokingham town centre yields are fixed on leases, and this is quite a crucial point. The plan relies on borrowings from the Public Works Loan Board. Although the rate can be fixed for up to 50 years for premium, they are only fixed when the loans are taken out, not when the leases are signed. The timing difference in an environment where interest rates are rising will give rise to a vulnerability which makes this budget unsafe. Worrying over the commitment of Optus is a concern. It's loss-making ever since its inception, and the latest reports show that the losses will continue. The budget is silent on any exposure due to the merger and the extent at which Wokingham Borough Council becomes liable for the debts and losses Reading, Windsor or Windsor and Maidenhead losses, which are predicted to be £890,000. I mean, that could go much more than that. There's no risk analysis on 21st century. Again, the risk factors are not included when you look at new houses and new house bonuses, etc. Because the money we get from new home bonus may dry up, and there will also, developers will have higher requirements for infrastructure, and the CIL funding would dry up. Will this Conservative government or party have a 3-line whip that supports an unsafe budget? I ask myself, and I'll be voting against it, and I will not, and I would add that I do not believe the budget is safe, and I'll be asking for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Delansky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst we're all only too familiar with the financial constraints in the times that we are living, looking forward, Children's Services will continue to focus on safeguarding children, promoting their welfare, access to good teaching, help children reach their full potential, and ensure that every child has the best start in life. We're proud to be part of the National Innovation Programme, with Professor Eileen Munro delivering improved outcomes for children, better social work practice and early help for our families. This forthcoming year, central government will reform the Education Service grant, taking 1.8 million away from support for our school improvement, school welfare, therapeutic health and the wider support that our services provide. This Conservative-led council is a huge advocate for all schools and pupils. Therefore, we're asking that this council tonight continues to financially back these vital support services within this budget to the tune of 1.8 million for 17-18. There's been much coverage in the national and local news about the new fairer funding reforms. Our schools are the lowest funded of all local authorities, with the average pupil expected to be funded in 17-18 to the amount of just £4,166, only half of what a school might expect in the City of London. Whilst central government consultation on fairer funding runs until 22nd of March, and I encourage everyone, and I mean everyone, to participate in this, we, your elected members, are working with our MPs to champion this borough's local schools. We're asking for a deal from the Secretary of State that really is fair and reflects our local needs and our local circumstances. We will also continue to invest in resources for our students with special educational needs. We will build a new resource that's in Crispin School, which will mean more pupils can receive their education locally. However, there are pressures in the SEN budget which again need to be addressed, as there is no growth factor in the higher needs block of schools funding from central government. This council continues to invest in schools, and tonight members are asked to support over £13 million of funds to build new provision for school places in the next year. 4 of these proposals will be coming before a special executive decision on the 15th of March. Lastly, in children's services, we continue to address ongoing pressures with more children coming into care, and in particular more children with higher needs. We're also proud to be supporting a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in our care, and whilst this does create a further cost to the council, I'm pleased that we will be supporting these children fleeing conflict, persecution in their home countries, and taking them away from the risks of children trafficking, slavery and prostitution. That's it.
That's about the best timing I've ever seen. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. May I add my welcome to my new colleague here on my left. What a stunning victory. Once again, the Conservatives complain, and will probably be whinging and whining, about the fact that Wokingham Borough is the worst funded local authority in the country. Quite rightly, residents expect that those who hold the levers of power will do something about it. We have hope that things might get better. Was there a knight in shining armour ready to ride to our rescue? No longer would we be the worst funded unitary authority in the country. Our champion would be speaking to ministers. Picture this in your mind. Our knight in shining armour charges towards Whitehall, singing the Welsh national anthem as he goes. He is going to get better funding for Wokingham, for our schools and for our council. Well, he didn't. He failed, even with the help of his trusty henchmen. We are still the worst funded unitary authority, despite the council being dominated by Conservatives, all of the borough's MPs being Conservatives, including the Prime Minister. What is the point of voting Conservative when you're constantly the worst funded unitary authority in the country? Perhaps our Conservatives should have followed the lead taken by some Conservatives. Publicly threaten a 15% rise in council tax. If we had done this, we would have been given a sweetheart deal by the government. Suddenly 15% becomes less than 5%, same as we're going to have to pay. The big difference is Surrey gets a massive wodge of cash through the back door. Why couldn't our knight have done the same for us? Is this budget safe? We think it's dangerous. Could this executive member for finance be the first one to bankrupt the council? You are allowing debt to rise by 82 million this year, growing to 191 million by 2019-20, and you call it safe. Before I finish, could the executive member for finance tell me why he thinks there will be a saving of over £1 million in the waste and recycling budget in 2019-20. To help him is page 74 of the medium-term financial plan. By this time we will have quite a few new homes which will need to have waste collected from them. So how is he going to find £1 million of savings?
Thank you. I'm not sure what's my name, but I has to do with anything, but we'll move on to the Welsh National Anthem.
He was Welsh Minister.
You didn't know the words, though. Councillor Ross, please.
Well done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just added something at the start here. Well, two things. One, I can't be the only one that doesn't say welcome to Imogen. But the other is, despite being the lowest funded council, we continue to present a balanced budget. Yeah. We need to use our resources wisely so we do not knowingly throw away the diverse and appealing environment in which we all live, even in this financial environment. This budget confirms our commitment to the health and well-being of our residents by its approval to providing and widening our leisure centre provision with exciting plans and capital money provision for the next 3 years for Bournemouth, Arborfield, Carnival Pool and Raj Green leisure centres. Outdoor provision is also planned, including a much needed access and car parking upgrade at California Country Park, subject to planning. This can be achieved by funding from developers as well as borrowing, which I remind you is at a very low public loan board rate, which we are sure can be repaid from the increased use of our facilities, both from the increased numbers of residents and producing more attractive venues. This also supports our focus on protecting our most vulnerable residents, as providing opportunities for exercise, indoors and outdoors, can assist them in a number of ways. I'm delighted we're able to continue all the services and facilities provided under this portfolio. It includes continuing work to reduce the possibility of flooding and ensuring new developments fully provide sustainable drainage schemes supported by procedures and good practice guidance and robust early planning scrutiny that we have put together. It also includes looking after of all our open green spaces and continuing our championship of biodiversity, being aware that new developments could, if not paid attention to, threaten our natural environment. I will just remind, and it was mentioned by the Deputy Leader earlier, those who have seen housing developments only in a negative way, that it has so far provided us with almost 100 hectares of additional open space in the form of these new country parks. Just to remind people, these have to be provided to deter residents increasing activity in the protected heathland areas to the south of our borough. But what a benefit for our residents! It does provide a great asset for us. We're working on ensuring that these new areas are clearly connected to our existing public